Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Very excited to have you here with us today. Today's life-changing story, I'm interviewing Stanley Beckett, who is the CEO of Change Creator. He's an international coach, burnout prevention and recovery specialist, author, scientist, and researcher. And he has a show on Radio 702 in South Africa. Welcome, Stanley.
Thank you. Hi, Michael, and hello to everyone else as well.
Hi, yes. So tell us a little bit about yourself and exciting work that you do.
Yeah, so to understand what I do, you actually got to go a little bit back to where it started from. And when I'd left school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, and tried a few things. Went to the army in those years. It was still compulsory to do that. It was the final year. It was compulsory to do that. So I went and did that, and then got out of school. Still wasn't sure. And then one day, I just woke up and realized I'd always had a love for the stars. So I decided to go and study for a Bachelor of Science degree in astrophysics. I wanted to
Oh,
become an
wow.
astronomer. Yeah, I wanted to become an astronomer and study the stars, and loved the work, but not the money, and not the kind of way you work on your own all the time. It didn't appeal to me. But the reason I mention that is because it got me to the love of measurements, where the scientific part comes in. I always believe if you can't measure, you can't improve. And there's a lot of people making a lot of claims out there. And I always wonder, how are you measuring that? And that kind of became part of what I was doing. And then someone told me to get into IT, that there'd be a lot of money in that, which I did for like 10 years of my life, and hated every day of my life for 10 years. I just did not enjoy what I was doing, but the money was good. So it kind of kept me stuck. But I think then back in 2005, 2006, I watched the movie The Secret with Bob Proctor. And
Yes.
I think something inside of there just changed for me. The possibility that you could think and create a different reality for yourself just really appealed to me.
Yeah.
So that was when I decided I need to make a big change in my life. And I went from a good income, a good salary, a good position I had to having nothing, because I left and decided I'm going to put my full focus into this new thing that I'd only heard about for the first time, called coaching. So I went into coaching, joined an organization called CCI, which is Creative Consciousness International. And they sort of do a coaching called consciousness coaching, which is like really coaching, but a very deep subconscious level of people. And that's the kind of level I wanted to work with people. And then I started my first company, which was called, I can't even remember, what was it called? No, it was called Envision Coaching. That's it. Envision Coaching, that we started. We ran it for many years. And then back in 2012, I left it for a while, did a few other things, traveled, studied, and then came back and started the company I'm doing now, which is called Change Creator. And Change Creator is based on the principle that everyone can change, but there's a formula for change, a very basic formula, but then you need to understand the variables for the formula. And I started applying that with companies, with individuals, along with a program called Thinking Results, which I learned in the States. And then over the past few years, there's also been a bit of going really deeper into what change is, into the roots of change. And I created what I called my wellness pyramid. So basically, the wellness pyramid says right on top, we all want to perform at our peak. So that's the peak performance point we're all going for. But in order to perform there, most people are going to have to change. Something inside of you has to change to reach the next level. You can't think and act on the same level with which you created your current situation. So that's where the change creator formula came in. But then we realized, but in order to change, people need what we call grit. That takes a certain type of grit to maintain a change. So it's easy enough to start and get excited and motivated about a potential change, like people do over New Year's, and when something dramatic happens in their life and they make the promise now they're going to change. But then that motivation runs out fairly quickly, and then you need grit and grit, but not the old kind of grit that we used to live in. It's a new, better, advanced type of grit that we call gritability. But then even that grit, we found, especially here in the African countries, we found that a lot of people are resistant to even hearing about changing, even hearing about developing grit. And the reason being because there's a very high level of burnout at the bottom of the grit, and something that I call a 4 cups, a lack of cups. And basically we all have 4 cups inside of us: physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. And
Mm-hmm.
if those things are empty, it's very difficult just to get through the day. So
Mm.
that's when we realize the first thing we need to be focusing on is the mental health side of people, getting their burnout under control, getting them to just be able to sit down and breathe and relax, and then open up their mind. And from that space, you can start developing grit. From a space of developing grit, you can really start adapting to the changes you need to make, and that's where peak performance come from. So that kind of explains, in a long way, the journey that's gotten me to where I'm sitting today.
And that's beautiful because you don't only deal with one aspect of a person, you look at them holistically, and you just have to figure out exactly where those stress points are, where they're really lacking. I love the way you say the empty cups and the full cups. Lovely
Yeah,
analogy. And
yeah, Michael. Yeah, sorry, carry on. Yeah, I just
yeah,
wanted.
no, I think
I'll just share another analogy with you quickly that explains it. Is that it's kind of like there was this hotel, and it's flooding at the basement,
yeah,
and they can't get guests in. So they get a plumber in, and the plumber, and I'm sure many people know the story, but it explains, well, what it is I really want to focus on. And they get a plumber in to come and see what's going on, and after why this water's rushing and how to stop it. And after about 2 or 3 minutes, he takes out a screwdriver, turns the thing, and the water stops rushing. So he gives them the bill of, let's say, 5,000 rand, and they go, 5,000 rand for the bill. You would just have for a few minutes and turn the screw. And he said, well, I'm charging you 500 rand for showing up and turning the screw, and 4,500 for knowing exactly which screw needs to be turned. And I
yeah,
found that the power in life is knowing exactly which screw needs to be turned. That's how we can be useful. We live in a world where there's a lot of people that are calling themselves coaches, and are great coaches and working with people, but really we need to get better at dialing into exactly how we can help people foster. That's really what coaching should be about. And I think that that's what the change creator and the 4 cups and all of those systems, they're all ways of helping to assess and measure. If you're stuck in any area of your life and you're frustrated and you can't move ahead, let's narrow in on what's going on as soon as possible, and get it moving forward. So that explains a lot of what we do. Yeah.
yeah. I love that. I love it. And I think it's important that people call the plumber in as well, because the times of trying to figure it out yourself, trying to go alone, and I got this is well over. We deal with a completely different level of stress, burnout, as you call it. Um, so I think don't you think it's important that even if it's a bad coach, people need to go out and see people and start talking, having conversations.
Yeah. I think it's really important. I think it's very difficult to assess yourself. I think when and you have to understand how the brain works. So, we've got as simple as possible. We've got the 3 parts of the brain. We've got the reptilian brain, which is
Mm.
your brain stem. It's called reptilian brain because it's in all reptiles. All animals have it, and it's really there to keep us alive.
Yeah.
That's the reason we can breathe, and our heart beats, and our digestive system works, and all these things, that we don't have to think about it. We've got our brain stem that takes care of that. Then the newer part of the brain, because Mother Nature doesn't like building things over, so it just builds new on top of the old, is your limbic system. And your limbic system is really your memories, when you feel things, the chemicals released that make you feel that way come from the limbic system, from the signals that it gets. And its purpose is to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Which, if you really understand that part, helps you understand a lot about why we struggle so much with change, because anything new isn't seen as safe. Even if you're struggling, at least you know the struggle, you know the players, you know the game.
Yes.
So we've got that limit, and then the bigger part of the brain that we all recognize, the neocortex, where our prefrontal cortex is, our thinking happens, our creativity. All of these things are there, but the problem is that this is like, if you take the brainstem, it's almost like a little moped scooter, and you take the neocortex, it's like a big Boeing jet. You can see how much more power it takes to run that thing than it takes to run the scooter. And
Yeah.
when you are feel under danger, when you are being attacked by a predator, you don't have time to use this big energy thing. It switches off, and because now all the blood is rushing to the parts of the body, the muscles that need to fight or flight, And what really lights up is the part of the brain that's about keeping you alive and keeping you safe. And the thing is now, because we don't know the difference between what's real and imagined, we switch on a system which is called stress, which makes our brain think we're being attacked all the time. So
Mm.
what's happening then is our thinking brain switches off. Our ability to find a creative solution isn't there. You know, as Einstein said, you can't solve the problems you're facing today on the same level of thinking with which you created them. It's not possible. You have to raise that level of thinking. But for most people, it's not possible because they are so stressed in their current situation, and it's like a daily occurrence, that they cannot see a way out. And that's why I agree with you. Even a bad coach can help you, because even a bad coach can ask a good question. And
Correct.
sometimes all it takes is one good question to
Yeah.
make you go, I didn't think about that, because that's what you do. You ask the right question, and you're suddenly looking in a different direction. And when you're looking in a different direction and focusing on it, you might actually see the solution which was there, because there's there's one thing I've learned in my astronomy, is everything is an equal opposite. There's nothing that's created without an equal opposite. And there's no way that a problem is created without the solution at exactly the same time. But
Yeah.
when we're not able to see it, when we're not able to at least look at it, then we're stuck. And I think that, to answer your question, yes, I think even coaches, even the best coaches, what makes them the best coaches is they have coaches. And I
Yeah.
think there shouldn't be a person on this planet that should be walking around that doesn't have a coach, because
Yes.
that coach isn't looking at it from that emotional side that's keeping you stuck. They're looking at it from a different way, and they kind of, almost, you can think of your lifeline to your neocortex brain, your thinking brain. So
And I
yeah,
think
I
that
agree with you.
I think the reason I love the coaching field is that the coach is just solely invested in your success. And
Yes,
that's the only intention, which I just find absolutely amazing. And I think that's why it's such a nice profession.
absolutely. And that should be the stand for every single coach, is that it's got absolutely nothing to do with you and 100% to do with the client. You really becoming like a conduit between, and that's the best way I can put it. That's because that's the best time for people to use it. You're becoming like that conduit between their thinking brain and their stress brain, and
Yeah.
you're helping them think again and connecting the two. You're just that lifeline that connects the two for them and says, "Hey, I'm not here," and this is important for people to realize what you're saying. That you're saying to the client, "I'm not here to solve your problems. I'm not here to tell you what to do. You already know what to do.
Mm.
And if I tell you what to do, you're not going to do it anyway. It's like a child. If you tell a child what to do, it's going to do the opposite. We don't like being told what to do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you ask yourself some questions that's going to open up that possibility that already exists there. I'm sort of just that conduit between that, because if that system was working properly, you wouldn't need a coach right now. You
Mm.
know, and then when I say everybody needs a coach, I don't mean everybody needs a coach every day of their lives, but we all go through times when we need, like, you've got a lot of people have got on speed dial their lawyer and their doctor. You should
Yeah,
have your coach, a great coach on speed dial all the time, and ring and say, listen,
absolutely.
this is what I'm going through. And a good coach will always be there for you, and just and doesn't even have to take long. It can just take one question you weren't thinking of to
Mm.
completely change the direction of your thinking.
Yeah, that's invaluable. You can't put a price on that, really. So I know you experience it, I experience it. So many people want to change. So many people are gung ho, ready for the change. Yes, let's do it. And the minute they start the change, wow, all this fear, this worry, the anxiety, everything starts to set in. Well, what do you do? Or what do you tell people that are really afraid of that process, especially once it's begun?
Well, look, all fear comes from the same place, Michael, and it's lack of understanding.
Mm,
The opposite of of understanding brings fear.
mm,
All throughout human history, whenever something new is brought to a person's attention, or some new big change happens, uh, the fear comes from not understanding. What does this mean? How is this going to affect me? What does this mean for the future? So I think the best combat to that fear when you're starting with something, which will always be there, is understanding. And I think maybe I could just mention two things here, because this is an important question, and hopefully this can help a lot of people just change the way you look at things. The things you look at start to change. And the first thing I'll say is that when I take my change creator formula at the very highest level, this is something we can all easily understand. Change takes place when your commitment towards that change is greater than your resistance towards that change.
Nice.
That's the balance that's going on all the time.
Mm.
And that's why you'll find people that will say, I really want to make this change, but I want to put just a warning line. And wanting something doesn't mean you're committed to it.
Yes.
We all want things, but it doesn't mean we're
Absolutely.
committed to it, right? There's a much higher level standard that's set for commitment than want. And want is not enough power to overcome resistance. Commitment is the power you need to overcome resistance. But then we need to understand there is resistance. But here's the thing that I have found in certain industries, why is coaching taken off so well, is because coaches, a good coach, will realize, consciously or unconsciously, that the power in change doesn't lie in lowering your resistance. The power in change lies in increasing your commitment. Because the moment your commitment is just slightly higher than your resistance, then it doesn't matter what the resistance is, because your resistance will start to crumble as you're taking action. As you're seeing things happen, that resistance will go. But we spend lifetimes trying to fight the resistance, trying to fight the past, trying to fight the negative thinking, the emotions, the experiences we've had, all of the things that make up your resistance. And we don't realize, but you could do in 10% of that time if you just focus on the commitment and understand it. But having said that, on the side of and it actually works on both sides. It plays a role on both sides. Is that fear you talk about? And I always talk about this little alien. I don't know if you ever saw that movie Men in Black.
Yeah.
But there's this one stage where the guy's opening up his face, and inside the face is sitting this little alien that's controlling everything. And I call that Mr. X. And I tell everybody, we've all got a Mr. X in our lives, sitting up here in our brain. And he came from another planet. Right. And the same way as if we were in space, we would need a space suit to be able to survive there. He needs a space suit, you space suit. And Mr. X is sitting in all he's concerned about is that you stay safe. Because if you're safe, then it means that he's safe. So, and he's safe. So he doesn't care if you're happy, sad, you have that dream house, you don't have that dream house. He doesn't care. He just says stay safe. And for him, safe is don't change anything. So Mr. X is sitting in this limbic system. Imagine him sitting there. And the limbic system controls your emotions, controls your feelings. So whenever you attempt to change something, the first thing Mr. X does is, because he's known you his whole life, is he goes to this big drawer that we all have. And let's say the warning light's going on, you want to make a change. Mr. X isn't happy because change isn't safe. He goes to this drawer, and this drawer is called excuses.
Yeah.
And we can come up with one excuse or the other. Why now is not the right time. I don't have the right money. There's a myriad of excuses. But once you've actually gone past that level to actual commitment and you're now engaged, then he moves to the next level, which is like a DEFCON 5, which is now all-out war. And you hit in your brain, you start to fear. You feel this anxiety in your body. You start to feel unease within you with this decision you're making, and you hit what's called this terror barrier. And this terror barrier is something we all face. And if fear lies on this side of the terror barrier, faith lies on the other side of the terror barrier. But in order to break through, you've got to have a big enough commitment. And unfortunately, what happens to too many of us is we hit this terror barrier and we bounce right back to safety. And we go, sure, I nearly invested that money. I nearly asked that person out on a date. I nearly started that new business, but thank goodness I didn't. And then you go, I just feel inside of me it wasn't the right time. That's not you. That's Mr. X.
Yeah.
And every time you hit this terror barrier in life and you bounce back, Mr. X becomes a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
Your job is, the best time I tell people to crash through that terror barrier is now, because you will never be stronger than you are today. Every time you hit it and you get weaker. It's like saying, I'm going to go exercise. And every time you promise next month I'm going to start, and next month comes and you don't start, it becomes even more difficult the next month to convince yourself that now you're going to start. So yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm giving long answers to short questions, but that basically is what it is for me. There's this terror barrier you experience in any change, especially if the change is outside of what you've normally done. Mr. X will go nuts. He will fight. Your job is to learn how to deal with Mr. X. And this, I just want to say that many people say, how do I get rid of Mr. X and how do I defeat him? You don't. Your job is to get Mr. X to work with you instead of against you. And if you can do that, that's when the magic in life happens. And that's when everything just suddenly starts to flow.
Yeah, excellent. I assume that you met Mr. X when you were studying astronomy.
I've met Mr. X many times in my life, but Mr. X has been my constant companion. I think the
Is that
difference is I'm grateful that I have the tools to know how to work with him.
mm,
And that's also why it became part of my, I think it's just who I am. It became part of my, I'll explain that quickly. I was telling somebody once, a spiritual teacher of mine, oh man, this building a business and being an entrepreneur, it's so tough. Every month you try to make sure the accounts are met and everyone's paid, and now you've got a family to look after. And I said, I wish sometimes I could just be a bricklayer. I could just go to a brickyard and just, my job is just to lay one brick on top of the other. And I know what my job is. I know every end of the month, this is how much money I get. And I've just got this happy little quiet life in some place, enjoying life. And she said, yeah, you can do that. She says, but within a week in the brickyard, you'll be walking around coaching everybody because that's who you
exactly,
are. And I
exactly.
think that's why I wanted to say, yeah, this is who I am. So yeah, I've had a lot of fears because I've made many major. I believe I can't teach if what I don't apply. So I'm constantly making big changes in my life moving forward.
Mm.
So Mr. X is absolutely my constant companion.
So yeah, I know that. Yeah, that's the value of having a coach is to help you see who you are, to understand who you are. That's bringing that out in you. The next question from what you were discussing would obviously be, so how do you increase your commitment?
So I don't know. Is it possible to share on the screen here at all? Do
Let
you
me
ever do that?
access.
Because then I can just show you
Yeah.
quickly in a way that helps you understand. Let me actually show you what the formula looks like, and then that'll help everyone understand. Okay, let me see if I can share. Can you tell me if you can see the
Uh,
screen?
yep, there it is.
Okay, so that in front of you is the
Start.
change creator formula. Okay, so when I said you'll see there's on the left hand side is that those are your variables that make up your commitment. On the right hand side are the ones that make up your resistance. So let me quickly run through them, and then that'll help answer your question. So the first thing, you'll see the D under the formula there. Let me just get this working here. That's what I call your level of dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a high enough level of dissatisfaction, you're not going to create change. This is the big problem for many people when it comes to change, is that they're dissatisfied, but they're not dissatisfied enough.
Yeah.
So they'll say, I'm not happy with my weight, but not enough to start taking action. I know I should be making more money and saving better for my future, but not enough yet to take action. And unfortunately, for many people, the level of dissatisfaction reaches the highest level when it's too late. When you're hearing you've got diabetes or some big genetic heart problem that could have been avoided if you started eating better 5 years ago.
Yes.
When you suddenly get fired at the age of 55 and you realize I haven't, or not fired, let's say, sorry, retrenched at the age of 55, and you suddenly realize nobody's hiring me anymore and I haven't saved up enough, I haven't looked after my finances enough, and now you're dissatisfied. Now you would do anything to go back in time and change it, but you can't, right?
Yeah.
But that's where it starts. No change happens, not unhappy. Remember, there's a difference between being dissatisfied and unhappy. Dissatisfaction is a much deeper form of realizing you won't be dissatisfied if you don't realize you can change. Unhappy is the feeling nothing can change. Dissatisfaction is the knowing it's up to me, but I'm not doing anything. So there's a different level there. Okay. Then once you're dissatisfied, we move up the triangle to the G, and the G is your goal. Once you're dissatisfied, you've got to have a proper goal,
Hmm.
okay, for where you want to move to. And this is another thing I see most people are very weak at, is understanding what a goal actually is and how to set a proper goal. So, but that's a topic for another discussion. It's actually the whole topic of my first book I wrote, Liftoff, was all around goals, understanding goals, and really what goals actually are. It changes everything in your approach towards goals. But
Yeah.
then inside the brackets, very important variables as well. The first B being your belief. If you don't believe it's possible for you to achieve that goal, you're not going to be committed.
Yes.
Okay, so belief has a big part on what's possible. And belief is different than faith. Faith, at least the way we describe it in Change Creator, faith is the belief things can change. Belief is the belief things can change for me. So it's one thing to believe people can change, it's another thing to believe I can change. You've got to believe it. Then we move on to the W, and the W is your willingness. Are you willing to make the sacrifices? Are you willing to do the things that need to be done? So that's your almost your first level of creating commitment. Is you've got to be dissatisfied enough. You've got to have a proper goal that makes sense to you. You've got to believe in it. You've got to be willing to say, listen, I'm ready and I'm willing to make the sacrifices. Then we move down to the BD, and that comes from my favorite book of all time, Think and Grow Rich, where Napoleon Hill had a whole chapter dedicated to say, listen, wanting is not enough. That's why I said to you earlier on, wanting does nothing to change anything for anybody. He says you've got to understand how to take the wanting and turn it into what he calls a desire. It's got to be a desire for you. But he says, depending on the size of the goal, even a desire is not enough. He says in all the people he studied, one of the things they had in common, they all had what's called a burning desire for success. That burning desire, depending on the level of that, helps on its own, is a variable that can overcome any resistance obstacle that stands in your way. But there's once again different things that create or take away from that burning desire, which is another conversation on its own. Okay, so you got the burning desire. Only once this is right, I call it that first part of the formula, you've got that level of dissatisfaction, the goal is there, you believe, you're willing, and you've got that burning desire. Only then should you be looking at the next variable, which is your action plan. But unfortunately, how many people start on their action plan without getting the first step right? And they just say, let's get going. And I have this program that I call the 25 agreements. And the 25 agreements, you have a conscious and a subconscious agreement that you have with yourself on how you're going to live your life to create the success you want. And agreement, I think it's agreement number 3. No, sorry, agreement number 4 says focus on the what, not the how.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the how just kills off commitment to people, because when you start, you're not on that level of vibration where you see the possibilities yet. You need to work up your way through doing the first part, like focusing on the goal, focusing on the burning desire, building it up, and then take action. If you take action before that part is in, the chances are you're just going to make yourself tired, running around a ball that just keeps moving, and you never quite get there. And then finally, the P stands for your level of power. So power is your ability to make things happen, and it comes from a much deeper level. So when you ask about what makes up your commitment, those are the things that means. Number one, you've got to have a healthy level of dissatisfaction and understanding why this change needs to happen. It's kind of like your why. You've got to have the right goal that you believe in and you're willing to make the sacrifices for. You've got to take the time out of your schedule and put time into yourself to create that burning desire. It's not there automatically. It might be for a short space of time, you might have a taste of it. But to keep it going and learning how to work on the burning desire is also how you get Mr. X on your side. You've got to put the work in there. And only then do you focus on the action plan that you follow up with power. And then I'll just mention just very briefly, on the other side is your resistance variables. So the T stands for your thinking. So that means the more negative your thinking is about the change you want to make, the more resistant you're going to be. Your F is for your feelings. The more you feel deep, that you have that fear, you have that doubt, you have all of those things that we usually work on as coaches with people. The higher that is, the more resistance there'll be. The PEX stands for your programming and experiences. So how you grew up is going to have a big influence on let's say, for example, you want to make a change in money, but your past programming and how you were brought up was to believe that money is bad, it's difficult to get money, your experiences with money have been very negative, you will be a lot more resistance to the idea that you can actually make more money. Same thing with weight loss and any of the even relationships, finding a happy relationship when you've had very bad experiences in the past. And then finally, your E stands for your environment. Very important is your physical environment and the people that you surround yourself with, like good coaches compared to family members who are always telling you you can't do it. So I hope that answers your question, but that basically is it. How I define what makes up your commitment to change, and how I define what are the variables that cause resistance to change.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and you obviously guide people through this whole process to get them to the place that they want to achieve, but coming through the other side as well, having a different mindset, having a different thinking patterns, overcoming the patterns that we bring from our childhood and experiences.
Yeah, you have to look at it all and see what makes the most sense. That's why every person's journey is going to be different, because what makes the most sense is starting from where you're at for you. You know, like Bob Proctor always said, in order to get to where you want to go, you first got to know where you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. If you're thinking that the problem lies in your action plan, for example, and you keep working on that and you're starting from there, but the problem doesn't actually lie there. The problem lies that the vision and where you want to go isn't clear. So every time you start taking action, it's not going in the right direction and you keep frustrating yourself. Can you see, if you're starting from the wrong place, you're just going to frustrate yourself. The idea with this whole work that I do is to help you as best possible to get you to start from the right place. Because the sooner you do, the sooner you're actually going to see some changes happening.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. It's very exciting. Yes. Well, thanks for sharing all of this information with us. And do you have a pearl of wisdom that you can end with?
Yeah, I always think if there's one thing that I can say to people, it would be the following in all of my learning is that, and if I ask you the question, Michael, because you're representing everybody else listening to this, have you ever had those days when you had to get out of bed and go work or go to a meeting or something, and you really didn't feel like getting out? You just felt like lying in bed and didn't want to do anything for that day, just lie there and it's maybe warmer there or whatever it might be. And if you have, you'll realize you still had the ability to get out of bed, get dressed, and get going, even though you didn't feel like it. The same way as somebody having to go and exercise or do some kind of exercise, and they really don't feel like it now. They'd rather just be lying watching TV or being lazy, but you still have the ability to get dressed, stick to your commitment, and go out. And what I would say to everybody is to realize your true power as a human being comes from what I've just explained. Is that if you ever want to measure where your true power, because it takes power to create change in anything in life, and your power is your ability to act despite your thinking and your feeling. The more I love listening to Tony Robbins. I was just listening to last night quickly as a short thing, and he was just saying every morning he gets up and he goes in ice cold weather, and he has a little pond where they cut an opening in the ice, and he goes in that ice cold weather and he goes and dives into that water and out every single morning to show his mind today, to show Mr. X, today I'm in control. Today I'm going to do everything I say I'm going to do. And he says he started off in the morning by doing the one thing he feels like the least doing. But by overcoming his thinking and feeling, he's now put his body on notice. Today, I'm overcoming my thinking and feeling. And that is why he's so successful. So if I could give everybody one takeaway, I would say, wake up each morning and do that one thing you really don't feel like doing. And put your body and Mr. X on notice that today I'm going to live my life with power. In other words, everything I say I'm going to do today, because even people who are healthy eaters, they don't want to necessarily always eat all the healthy options. They want some of the unhealthy options. People who are doing well financially, they don't want to just take their money and invest it and not use it now. They want to go and use it. They want to go and buy things. But their power is they overcome their thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
We all know what to do. So that would be my takeaway wish for everybody. Is put Mr. X on notice from today to say, from now on, I'm going to be working harder on being my word. When I say I'm going to do something, even though I don't feel like it, because I know that fear and that anxiety and excuses is coming from Mr. X because he knows things are changing. That's a good sign. When I feel those things, it's a good sign.
Yeah.
So even if that's the way I feel, that's okay. But I'm putting you on notice that as of today, I'm stronger than my thinking and feeling, and that's how you develop power.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you. Very inspiring. Put Mr. X in his place and and move forward with your life. Thank you so much for joining us on the channel. It's been so fascinating. Thank you for sharing your formula with us. If everyone,
it's my pleasure, Michael.
Yeah, if anyone wants to get hold of you, all the information will be in the description that they can contact you. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you, and you too. Thanks, Michael.
Great, everybody. Thank you for listening to another life-changing story. We'll see you next time. Remember to visit our website, lifechangingcourses.co.za, and go on your own journey and change your own life. Thank you once again. Goodbye, everyone.